Welcome to the Eminem tier list. Eminem album solo tier list. This video is long overdue. I've been wanting to do an Eminem album tier list for many reasons. One of the reasons being, if you are aware of my channel, I tend to glaze Eminem a lot because, well, he's my GOAT. He is the GOAT. He's my GOAT. He's my favorite rapper. But at the same time, I've been wanting to do this video because every Eminem, well, not every, some of them are not as harsh, but a lot of Eminem album tier lists that I've watched tend to be a little bit harsh. And he's one rapper in this world. Obviously, it's due to the fact that he's so big and he's a global megastar. So obviously, opinions will be very much polarizing. That doesn't surprise me. But there are a lot of harsh opinions within within people's view on Eminem's discography, and I want to squash all of that. As much as, yes, he's my GOAT, he's my favorite, but I'm gonna be objective when I speak about these albums and where and why I place them in certain places, because I think his discography gets looked upon in a very much harsh manner, especially of late. But yeah, sit back, relax, and let's get into this tier list. Starting all the way back to Infinite. I tend to not necessarily overlook, but I tend to not speak about Infinite whenever I talk about Eminem albums. And one reason only, well, two. One is that obviously Infinite wasn't released from a major label. Obviously, it wasn't a major label release. Nonetheless, it is an Eminem album. That doesn't negate the fact that it is an Eminem album, and that's technically his first studio album. I do acknowledge that. But the only reason why, and it's a bit more of a subjective take in a sense, but it's more in the sense that it doesn't feel like an Eminem album, if that makes sense. Because you go from Infinite and then fast forward to Slim Shady LP, which obviously I'll get there. It's like night and day. Obviously in Infinite, you could very much hear the Nas inspiration, you can very much hear the AZ inspiration. And because of that, it didn't feel like it was Eminem in his true form, in his, like, you could see that, no, this is still heavily Nas and AZ inspired, which is fine. It was good. And for the most part in that album, it was good rapping. It was good. Flows were good. Production wasn't bad, in considering, he was limited on resources. But it was an okay album. And in saying that, I'm going to place it in okay. I'm going to place it in okay. I don't think it's good / great / amazing / perfect. I think Infinite was an okay debut album. Some would say that's harsh, because I've spoken to people that say, no, that's actually their favorite Eminem album, which for me, obviously, I'm not going to bash people for what their favorites are, because that's very much subjective. That's very much personal taste. So I'm not going to bash anyone for saying it's their favorite. But for me, it didn't feel like an Eminem album. It's not the Eminem that I fell in love with. So yeah, it's going to go into okay, and that I'll swiftly move on. What I view as Eminem's first album. Obviously, that's not the case, but Slim Shady LP. This, for me, and obviously for the industry as a whole, was the resurgence, or not resurgence, sorry, was the breakthrough of Eminem, was the introduction of Eminem. Slim Shady, the alter ego of Slim Shady. Arguably, I'm going to say top 5 in terms of just impact into the world, in terms of introducing yourself, because in that top 5, obviously at number 1, 50 Cent has to be number 1 in terms of just how big that moment was. Obviously, I was 5 years old when 50 Cent, and I was 1 year old when Eminem dropped this, but so I can't speak as I was there for both those situations. But in terms of what I've seen, what I've heard people talk about, what's been documented online, we can clearly see the impact Eminem had on the industry. And obviously, rappers, his peers, speaking about the moment of the introduction of Slim Shady, of the introduction of Eminem. Dr. Dre, he speaks about, I think Dr. Dre, and if I find that video, but he quoted and said, Eminem literally saved his career. That's what he said. Eminem literally saved his career. Obviously, in 1999, you also did 2001, with Eminem obviously very much putting in his fingerprints on that album. So you have this big moment in hip-hop with this white guy, this white, very much loud in terms of dress code, yellow hair, like witty and crazy, like flow, rhyming, rapping ability, and it's like it's was totally different to what has been what we were used to in terms of the hip hop industry. Like he was and still is a unicorn within the hip hop space. And not only did he introduce himself in such a big manner, but he introduced himself, as a guest within this hip hop space, and he became very much more than a guest. Now, obviously not at the time, but as time went on, he went on to become the GOAT or one of the GOATs. But with this, like in saying that Slim Shady LP, you have songs like My Name Is, which My Name Is being the first studio session with Dre, which that story always gives me goosebumps because the way Dre narrates that story, where literally their first studio session, their first encounter together, and Dre plays the beat. My name is my name. Oh, come on, man. That is actually crazy to me. That is crazy. And with that album, you get some of Eminem's most, some deep cuts in there with Role Model, Rock Bottom, some of his best rapping is on that album with Bad Meets Evil, with Royce the 5'9". That group ends up formulating from that album. Well, technically they met in 97, but they officially coined the term Bad Meets Evil. You have some of Eminem's best storytelling on that album with Brain Damage. It's, as a body of work, it's an amazing body of work. Some would argue some of the subject matters didn't age well, which I can dispute. That I can completely disagree on that. I think that album and a lot of his albums have aged quite well. I think they're not dated. I think they still hold the test of time, which is the definition of a classic, which Eminem has quite a few of those. In saying that, I think as a debut album, perfect. As an album, it's perfect. And in saying that, I'm going to slap it in the perfect tier. Moving over now to the Marshall Mathers LP. Obviously with the Slim Shady LP, him, introducing the Slim Shady alter ego character. And then now you go from that to Marshall Mathers LP. And in terms of how the album starts, it starts in a similar manner with the public service announcement, same almost, it's as if it's like a continuation of what we already had from the Slim Shady LP. But now he's kind of rapping in the perspective of Marshall being, the human behind the Slim Shady alter ego. And with that, you have some deeper cuts within this album. Obviously, you have deep cuts within the Slim Shady LP, but within this album, he's probably deepest cut in Stan, and you have some cuts where he's speaking from a more human perspective of the way I am, where he's not this perfect human being. He can be not horrible, but he can be an asshole. He can be, just don't test him. So now it's a lot more from a personal view of the album, but you still have a lot of Slim Shady style songs in there, with songs like I'm Back, songs like Remember Me, songs like Drug Ballad. You still have those shock value songs that you got from the Slim Shady LP, but somehow, some way, it's 10 times better, if not 100 times better, because now you have more of a focused body of work. Not that Slim Shady LP was not focused, but now it's a lot more focused compared to the Slim Shady LP, because this is all relative. A lot more focused, a lot better writing, a lot better rapping, a lot better production as well, because I think the production side also improved. You have the Slim Shady LP now from Marshall's perspective times 10, and it's better. It's just better. Classic album. Some of his best songs are on there, with, like as I've already mentioned, with Stan, with The Way I Am, with the title track Marshall Mathers. You have Drug Ballad, which is an extremely underrated song. You have some of his greatest one of his greatest verses of all time in Remember Me. You have Criminal as well, very much an underrated storytelling track, which is the outro track of the album. Some of his greatest cuts are on this album. When you want storytelling, it's there. When you want some shock value, it's there. When you want some his deeper cuts, it's there. You have everything in this album and more. One of the greatest rap albums of all time. Most actually people would say that this is his best album, and this is one of the best, if not the best, hip hop album of all time. and I liken one more album, which we will get there very soon. But this is indubitably one of the greatest albums of all time. And in saying that, I'm going to slap it in perfect. And next up, we have the third installment of what is the greatest or one of the greatest three album runs of all time in the Eminem Show. And if you've been on my channel before, there's one way that I describe the Eminem Show as, well, two ways. One being it takes all the best qualities from the Slim Shady LP and the best qualities of the Marshall Mathers LP, and it's combined into one masterpiece. And the second description that I give it, it's just, for a lack of a better term, it's a big show, hence the Eminem Show. And this is depicted with the opening and closing tracks of Curtains Open and Curtains Close, where, you know, or Curtains Up rather, where it's, you're in a show. It's as if you're in this big show that he's about to present, and that's exactly what you get in songs like Till I Collapse, in songs like the intro track of White America, in songs like Save for the Moment, in songs like Cleaning Out My Closet. You know, these are massive tracks, grandiose tracks that you don't really get from the first two albums. And in saying that, I think this is his magnum opus. I think this is his best ever album. I think this is the top three album of all time in rap history. This, for me, writing is more focused. Sequencing is a lot more focused. It feels a lot more. Not that, no. Those first two albums are very much focused, very much great sequencing. You know, not only with the skits as well, which, if there's one thing that Eminem has gotten right, out of all the things that he's gotten right, but the skits, his skits are always A1, man. No matter what you want to say, his skits are always entertaining. It's these nice B-rolls. Like, if you were to watch a movie, it's those B-roll clips that you have in between scenes, and it's like, well, that's what a skit is for, right? But Eminem just does it right, and he does it in a way that it gets you so captivated within the album. And man, what can I say about this album? His best songs on this album, Till I Collapse. Some of his biggest anthems are on this album. You have even cuts like Superman, which I love. You know, My Dad's Gone Crazy, I love. Songs that are not even that popular, but I still love, like songs like Drips, which obviously it's a bit more of a bit of an uncomfortable cut, if you must, but then Eminem has a lot of those songs in there. But that's such a funny song, narrating a funny story, you know, along with Obi Trice. And it's like, yeah, some would argue that you don't want to really hear stuff like that, because a lot of the lyrics on that song, and you could say a lot about that in like Eminem's discography as a whole, it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's so funny, it's so humorous, where it's like, and it's done in such a witty and great rhyming fashion and like scheming fashion, where that's what Eminem is. That's what Slim Shady Marshall Mathers is. That's who he is. And for me, that's when Eminem is at his best, when he kind of doesn't overthink a project and he just does what he feels like doing because he wants to do it. So in saying that, I've already said it's his best album, and in saying that, that's three perfects in a row, man. And I don't think anyone can dispute that. Next up, we have Encore. Most would say that, yep, this is Eminem's first dud. This is where it all went downhill. Oh, Eminem is nothing outside of his first three album run. Oh, Eminem fell off. Oh, Eminem this. Oh, Eminem that. Look, I have very strong opinions about Encore, and I will admit it is a fall from grace if you just look at it relatively. From the Eminem Show being his best album, one of the best rap albums of all time. You know, obviously you have a 2-year gap between the Eminem Show and Encore, and I can only imagine what the expectations were from the industry. And obviously, there is a fan theory. Well, not really a fan theory. It's been confirmed that leading up to the release of Encore, a couple songs got leaked, which resulted in Paul, Eminem's manager, and Eminem and Dre having to apparently record last-minute songs, and then remove the songs that subsequently got leaked, which, in hindsight, I don't really understand that. And obviously, this is not something that's confirmed. It's just from a few sources that I've seen online, on YouTube, on Twitter. But if that's the case, I would just release the album as it was intended, because I'm not really very much aware of how the music business is run. But would it really be any different if the songs got leaked prior and just you releasing the songs as they are. But okay. But this really, really painted the album in a whole different light for me, because I will attach a video on here. The video is called Encore, the album that could have been. So this is where I initially got this theory of this story as to what happened with the release of Encore. And with this video, with the track list that's on this video and how the album is structured, it's like it feels like a whole new album, and it's just an additional 4 songs and just removing the last minute duds that Eminem had to record, which are inclusive of Rain Man, Big Weenie, Puke, and I believe my first single. With those duds, right, I still see Encore as a good album. Borderline great. I think it gets over-hated at times, which is the common theme as to a lot of Eminem albums, which I'll speak about going forward. Because from here on onwards, it's just a spew of Eminem hate for me. Because I think unanimously, I think the industry, even if you hate Eminem, everyone unanimously agrees that the first 3 albums are just classics. Unless you really hate him, if you're gonna dispute that about his first 3. But from Encore onwards, oh my goodness, every single album gets hate, and for the life of me, I don't know why. Encore especially for me. Actually, no. I think there's others that get a lot more hate than they should. But Encore for me, I don't have it in the top 5. It's not my top 5 Eminem albums. And to be exact with my personal ranking of Eminem albums, I have Encore at about 7th or 8th. I still love it though. Obviously, that's bias coming from me, but it gets a lot of hate. It gets way too much hate. You still have some of Eminem's best writing on here, with Spend Some Time, with Mockingbird, with Curtains Down, Encore Down. You have some of his best writing in this album. Some of his greatest anthems are on this album. For the life of me, I just don't get it. It's still a very good album. Very, very good album, borderline great. And in saying that, I'm gonna slap it in good. Swiftly moving on now to Relapse. Now, if there is one album that is extremely polarizing within the Eminem fandom, within the hip-hop community as a whole, it has to be this one. I've already spoken about Encore, but I think it's this one. I think there is no singular album from Eminem's discography that gets the most polarizing views. This is Eminem's Yeezus. I'm not going to make this a Kanye West video, obviously. Kanye West, I'm not going to speak about him here. But this is Eminem's Yeezus, and hear me out. This, for me, is that album. Firstly, let's just give a bit of context here. We have a 5-year gap between Encore and Relapse. Obviously, between 2004 2009, Eminem did release some stuff with D12. He released some singles here and there, some features. And then in 2006, Eminem's best friend, Proof, tragically passes away. And from here, it's just a downward spiral in Eminem's life. He was already on drugs. But now he ended up overdosing, leading up to rehab, and then leading up to this album. Obviously, at the time of this album dropping, he was 1 year sober. He was sober since 2008. So this is a 1 year sobriety. But a lot of this album was constructed around the time of trying to get sober. A lot of the time. And we're going to speak about recovery. It's like after this, but in recovery, he gives a bit of context to say, Encore, I was on drugs, Relapse, I was flushing them out. So around this time, he was essentially recovering, and you get what is the comeback album, the ultimate comeback album. And this is where he kind of takes a left turn in terms of, yes, obviously, it still maintains the shock value that Eminem has given us already, but he takes it up to a whole new level. He came to this album with a whole new script in terms of horrorcore and just painting a picture. You get it already from the start of the album. Not even the first track, you get it from the skit, Dr. West. You get the picture as to what you're about to get into with, he's having this conversation with Dr. West, and he's just out of rehab. And then essentially Dr. West is like this funny character where Eminem is like trying to ask for advice as to what must I do if I get tempted. And then Dr. West is like, no, just take a drink. And then he literally flashes pills in Eminem's face, which obviously that really paints the picture of the album Relapse. But he didn't actually relapse in the process of this album. It's just the concept of the album, because Eminem has been sober since 2008. But yeah, so already from the start, you already know what you're about to get into, and from there, you just get this extreme shock value, extreme horrorcore, extremely disturbing lyrics, extremely disturbing subject matters, and songs like Insane, songs like Stay Wide Awake, which I think is a top 3 Eminem song of all time, songs like My Darling, which I think is a very underrated, one of the best storytelling tracks in Eminem's discography, which I think My Darling is a top 5 Eminem song. And then you have deeper cuts like Beautiful, you have deeper cuts like Deja Vu, you have, come on, man, this album is this album is top 3 Eminem, by the way. This album for me is top 3 Eminem. It's top 3. I've had this take before on here, and I'll go as far as to say that this album is perfect. Yeah, it's a skipless album, and I want someone to get into my comments and say what album, what song is a skip. The one that people will say it's insane, but I think that song is so horrible in terms of subject matter, but in terms of how he lays it out, it's just so quirky, so funny, so witty. The story is funny. It reminds me, it's like a remix, and well, not a remix, but it's like a version of Brain Damage, but a lot more extreme, a lot more uncomfortable, a lot more, but obviously like different subject matters, but just in terms of how the song is structured, yeah. Songs like Stay Wide Awake, which is an uncomfortable listen. It's in the same bracket as like, which obviously this song is a lot worse, but it's in the same bracket of Dance to the Devil by Immortal Technique. But that's a lot worse. And I've only listened to that song twice. Very uncomfortable song, and I would not recommend it at all. But it's one of the best storytelling tracks of all time, but it's a horrible song. But Stay Wide Awake is in that bracket. But I listen to Stay Wide Awake quite often, and I think it's Eminem's best writing in terms of just rhyme schemes, flow, come on, man. I into this trance. He puts you into this mood with, soon as my flow start, I compose art like the ghost of Mozart. Oh my goodness. If you're gonna start a song like that, nah. Top 3 Eminem in my books. This album is top 3 Eminem. It's his third best album in my books. One of the best horrorcore albums, concept albums, and in saying that, I've already said it, it's perfect. It's perfect. Now on to Recovery. Recovery, a year later now. And with this album, right, and this is the problem with Eminem. This is the problem with Eminem. He kind of lets critics, the views of critics, kind of get into his ear a bit too much, which will get, it's going to be a common theme going forward. But for this, it was not justified, because obviously with the drop of Relapse, clearly there was a mixed reception. Clearly there was a mixed reception in terms of that album and the subject matter. And he comes back a year later, recovered in a sense. And yet again, alluding to the fact that on Encore he was on drugs, Relapse, I was flushing them out. Now on Recovery, he essentially says, I'm back to my best self and all this stuff. And with Recovery, by the way, is my favorite Eminem album. It's my favorite. It's the one that I've listened to the most. It's the one that it was the first Eminem album that I firstly got on CD, and it was the first Eminem album that I listened to from back to front. Obviously, I was already exposed to Marshall Mathers LP around that time. Well, not when it dropped, but like around 04, 05 when I got into Eminem's music. But I didn't really listen to a fully fledged album. I just listened to it on radio and what I got exposed to at the time. But in 2010, when Recovery dropped, I got the CD. Well, my father got the CD, and essentially I got to listen to it. And yeah, for me, this is my favorite Eminem album. Because of that, obviously, I have that a bit of bias. But I think this album, it's another polarizing one within the fandom, within the hip-hop community. But this one, all you have to do is just go on YouTube and type up any song from that album. People will be testifying in those songs to say, this album saved my life. This album brought me out of a dark place. This album for me is like a therapy session. This album is a big therapy session for me, because this is where Eminem gets really, in terms of deep cuts, it's probably the album that has most of his deep cuts. Talking to Myself, You Never Over, like Spacebound, songs like Going Through Changes, songs like Almost Famous, songs like Love the Way You Lie, these deep personal cuts. And it's like this whole big therapy session. And for me, yet again, skipless album. Now, not to say that it's skipless, that it's perfect. It's not. It's far from perfect. It's far from perfect. Obviously, with the production, it does kind of take a dip in terms of what you got from previous Eminem albums. But I don't think it's a badly produced album. I think the album that follows it up is a kind of, not badly, but wasn't really Eminem style produced. But this album it's a lot more pop centric. It's a lot more, you know, grandiose in the sense that he brings on the likes of Pink, you know, and it's this, and he brings on the likes of Rihanna, and it's this grandiose album, not in the same breath as the Eminem Show, but in just like in a pop manner, but done right. There's an album that tries to be in the same bracket, but it goes horribly wrong. But we will get to that album. But for recovery for me, putting bias aside, putting all this aside, I don't think recovery is perfect. It's definitely not perfect. I would either go low amazing or high great, because where I rank Eminem, where I rank recovery, by the way, I rank it fifth. I think it's Eminem's fifth best album after obviously the first three and Relapse. I think it's Eminem's fifth best album. It's not perfect, so I'm gonna go amazing for recovery. Going over now to an album that Eminem has dropped, which I view arguably his most underrated album. And I've made this take quite a few times whenever I speak about Eminem albums on this channel. I think the Marshall Mathers LP2 is so underrated. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I understand the critics that it gets. From firstly, the fact that it's a sequel to arguably the greatest hip hop album of all time. The fact that the production is very much non-Eminem style. You know, you get this Rick Rubin rock inspired sound, and it's like, it worked, by the way. I think Eminem made it work, but it was different. It was different. He took a direction that not many of us expected. So it's not very much his best produced album, but I think Eminem made it work. I think for the production that wasn't really expected, I think for what it was, he made it work. Now, the reason why I say it's underrated, it's his most underrated, because I think this is arguably, same can be said about Relapse, but I think this is arguably, in terms of writing and on a technical standpoint, I think this is his best album on a technical standpoint. Songs like So Much Better, songs like Rhyme or Reason, songs like Groundhog Day, songs like Brainless, songs like Asshole, songs like Wicked Ways. These are some of Eminem's best lyrically. These are some of Eminem's best on a lyrical standpoint than songs that I've just named. Songs like Bad Guy, songs like Evil Twin. This is some of Eminem's best writing of all time. Like, what are we even saying here? I don't think people actually listen to this album. I think people just let the opinions of others flush them and then they just ran with it. I don't think people have actually listened to this album, and a lot can be said about most of Eminem's albums. I think this album gets so overly. I didn't even mention Rap God, by the way. And there's one reason why I didn't mention Rap God is because I can respect that song on a technical standpoint. I can, because I think it was Joe Budden that even said something similar, where he said, when he was speaking about his alien list, where he puts Eminem on that alien list, where he's one of those rappers that can do stuff with words and not many of us can do. And then he references Rap God to say, and then he even said, I don't like Rap God, but I can respect that song for what it is, because that's an alien-like song. But I'm personally not a big fan of the fast, rapidy rap stuff. I'm not a big fan of, not the biggest fan, or let me say, of Tech Nine. I'm not a big fan of Rap God. I'm not a big fan of Godzilla. I'm not a big fan of Speed 'Em, by the way, speaking of Tech Nine. I'm not a big fan of those verses, those type of songs, but I can respect them on a technical standpoint, because a lot of people, a lot of surface level hip hop fans, they want to put Eminem in this box to say, oh no, he just raps fast. That's why people view him as the best. If you tell me with a straight face that, oh no, Eminem just raps fast and that's why people think he's the GOAT, then you're not listening to Eminem. Then we are not listening to the same Eminem. He has some songs that he raps fast, I will agree. But if you just summarize Eminem as a fast rapper, then you are not listening. Then we're not listening to the same Eminem. So I didn't even name Rap God. I can respect it on a technical standpoint. It broke records, most words in a rap song or something along those lines. Fine, fair play. I think it's in the bottom half of Marshall Mathers LP2. And that's the very reason why I say this album is so underrated. Well, personally for me, in my opinion, songs like Rap God on the lower level, that'll be some people's best song. I'm not a big fan of the fast rapidy stuff, man. I'm not a big fan. Sometimes it can be done right. His recent verse on JID's Animals Part 2, I like that. I liked it. That's also fast, rapid rap. I liked it. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. it was a great verse, great verse. But I'm not a big fan of when he gets into that speed him like or Godzilla like or rap god like bracket. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan. I don't hate it, but I don't like it either. But in saying that, where are we placing Marshall Mathers LP2? And I'm going to be objective here, as I've really tried to be objective. I'm going to put Marshall Mathers LP2. I have Marshall Mathers LP2 around his 6th or 7th best album. I'm going to put Marshall Mathers LP2 either in high, good, or low grade. I'm going to put it in great. I think it's a great album. If we just take the writing into consideration, the anthems that you have on there, some of his best writing is on there, and then just the production just weighing it down, hence why I can't put in perfect or amazing. I think it's a great album. I think Marshall Mathers LP2 is a great album. Bad Guy, Evil Twin, Wicked Ways, Asshole, Groundhog Day, Brainless. Come on, man. And these are amazing / perfect songs, by the way. Just saying that. Going over now to an album I'm just not going to speak about a lot. I will preface this by saying, and I think we all know where this is going, but I will preface this by saying, in preparation for this video, I have re-listened to the album. Back to front. And
hear me good, nigga. I'm here to double down. That shit is a 2-pack of ass. The fuck are you talking about? That shit stinks.
Pretty much, I don't like it. I don't like the flows. I don't like the fact that he tried to go the pop-centric way and it just didn't work. There's just so little to recover from this album. There's just so little to digest from this album. You have Castle, you have A Rose, you have tragic endings, you have, I can't even remember the songs that I listened to. There's not many. And in saying that, it's going to go bad. It's such a disappointing album, and I don't want to make a whole soliloquy for this album, but you have a 4-year gap between Marshall Mathers LP2 and Revival, and you get this. Horrible album. Bad album. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've tried to give it so many chances, but it's a bad album. Going over now to essentially a response project, Kamikaze. A response project to this album that I just mentioned now, a couple of seconds ago. And Kamikaze, for me, it's like one of those albums where it's like, why didn't you just give us this? But obviously, you don't get Kamikaze without getting Revival, so I get that logic, right? But why didn't you just give us this rap, this energetic and not these choppy, horrible flows that you try to do on Revival, and just this awkward subject matter that you try to do on Revival, and it's just, why didn't you just give us this energy, but Kamikaze as a project, and I've said this before, Kamikaze as a project, as an album experience, it's not that good in the sense that it's not the album that I'll keep going back to. It has great rapping, for sure, with songs like Not Alike, Normal, you have songs like The Ringer, the intro track, you songs like Greatest, you still have a lot of great rapping on here. But it's, for me, an album experience for the most part has to be an experience. An album experience, it's an experience. It's like you almost watching a movie, like, in a sense. And all this was just a response to the deserved critics, or the criticism that he got from Revival. Very much deserved. So it's like it's more so a response. It's like this beef that we had with Eminem, and he's just responding back to us in a very good manner, by the way. Great, if I may say. But as an album experience, I can't remember the last time I listened to it back to front. I still listen to quite a few songs. It's in my regular rotation with the songs that I've named already. But as an whole album experience, it's been a while. I hate Venom. No, come on, man. Also, Eminem with hooks. He's been very, very, very questionable at times. Even as an Eminem fan, I can't say that. And that's just one example of just a horrible, horrible hook. But in saying that, where am I placing Kamikaze? I think a fair rating for Kamikaze is okay. It's an okay album. It's not mid or bad. No, it's an okay album. It's okay. And I think okay is a bit generous, but I think it's okay. It has great rapping. Don't get me wrong. I don't want people to get me wrong here. There's some great rapping on here. But as an album experience, it doesn't match up to the likes of Relapse, Recovery, Eminem Show, Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP. So it's complete night and day. It's complete night and day. So I'm gonna go okay for Kamikaze. Yeah. And then 2 years later, we get Music to Be Murdered By, the surprise album, Music to Be Murdered By. And now this is back to now an album experience. This is the Eminem. Obviously, no. It doesn't match up to his first 3 albums. Doesn't match up to Relapse. No, he hasn't got close to that peak, and not many people can get close to that peak. Can I divert a bit here? Eminem gets this treatment that, you haven't released something as good as, who will release something as good as those days, man? Jay-Z hasn't released the likes of Reasonable Doubt, Blueprint, Black Album in a long time. Nas hasn't released anything close to Illmatic. Obviously, 2 completely different rappers, but Eminem gets unfair treatment at times, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, but with Music to Be Murdered By, you have a body of work that feels like a body of work, and you hadn't got this since the Marshall Mathers LP 2, which was 7 years prior. So now you have an album. Now you have an album experience. It has structure, it has good sequencing, great songs. Some of his best verses in Yeah Yeah, I Will, You Gon' Learn. Royce's verse on there is actually quite crazy as well. Darkness in some of his best storytelling cuts. If you know the song, is it Reunion off of Bad Meets Evil? That type of song where it's kind of taking 2 stories and then they combine into one timeline. I love that song. Very, very underrated, by the way. But you have such cuts on that album. Aside from songs like Stepdad and I think the song with Ed Sheeran, I keep forgetting that, what's the name of that song. But aside from those 2 songs and those 2 very clear skips, you have a great album. You have very much a great album, either high good or low great. And in saying that, I'm gonna put Music to Be Murdered By, I think high good. I think it's a very, very, very good album. I think I'm gonna put Music to Be Murdered By at high good. Yeah, I think that's a fair rating for Music to Be Murdered By. Last but not least, 4 years later, you get the death of Slim Shady. Wow. Obviously, it was just last year, so I'm not going to speak about it as if it's some nostalgic memory, but I still remember that morning when that album dropped, like it was yesterday. It dropped, and, I literally took some time just before I had to go to work, because obviously it was a working morning for me, but I took some time just to digest the album firstly, and that first listening experience for me, top notch. Especially just the way he attacked the intro with Renaissance. Oof. And if you've seen my top intros for Eminem, Renaissance is near the bottom, only because Eminem has just had some legendary intros. It's nothing more to it. But Renaissance is an amazing opener to an album, and then you get a very, very good body of work. Obviously with the concept, yet again, a body of work. Not whatever Kamikaze was, and I love Kamikaze. I love it. I love it for what it is. It's a response project. It's not like a very much of an album experience. It's just a response. It's like, as I said, it's this beef that we had with him. But with Death on Slim Shady, you have yet again a body of work, a proper body of work. And in here, you have some extremely great verses. Songs like Fuel showing you he's still very much in form. Songs like Habits showing you that he's still very much in form. Even cuts like Antichrist, Lucifer, still very much in form. And then obviously you get songs that he dedicated to Haley, which, not that those songs are bad. No, good songs. But, if you're going to make such songs, I will always go back to the likes of When I'm Gone and Mockingbird, which they don't hold up a candle to those songs. So it's a bit of an unfair comparison in my books. But I feel as if I've gotten so much of those Haley songs, and rightfully so, because come on, I would also dedicate, if I was a rapper, I would also dedicate, half my discography to my daughter, if I was a rapper. So I get that, but I just feel as if you've given us so many all-time Haley dedicated tracks. It's like, yeah, those ones don't really hold up a candle, but they're good/great for what they are. But in saying that, for the concept of the death of Slim Shady, for what it is, I think the death of Slim Shady is, I think it's good/great. Do I have it over Music to Be Murdered By? Yes, I do. Slightly. I do have it over Music to Be Murdered By as an album experience. And saying that, I'm gonna put it in great. I think The Death of Slim Shady is a great album experience. But yeah, in saying that, guys, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of my rankings? Do you think I was partial? Do you think I was objective in my views of each album? And yeah, thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.